WIBC. WIBC HD1 Indianapolis. The news starts now.
Hearing the arguments. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. The Supreme Court heard from attorneys for the state of Colorado who want former President Trump removed from their primary ballot over his actions on January 6th. But they don't appear ready to allow the former president to be disqualified.
The justices wrestled with novel questions about the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause and whether the framers intended for it to apply to the president. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson and other justices also questioned why a single state should hold such sway in a national election and how courts should act if multiple states reach different conclusions. Chief Justice John Roberts raising concerns about a flood of disqualification challenges.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. A decision could come in a matter of weeks. President Biden says he's pleased after the release of the special counsel's findings into classified documents from when he was a senator and vice president stored in his home and elsewhere.
Bottom line is the special counsel in my case decided against moving forward with any charges. This matter is now closed.
The president said he willingly gave testimony to the special counsel and cooperated fully, and former President Trump did not. Trump tells Fox he believes the criminal charges in his case should all be dropped after the dismissal of the charges in President Biden's case. 6 members of a family, including 3 children, remain unaccounted for after a fire at a home in suburban Philadelphia yesterday after 2 police officers were shot when they responded to a 911 call. The Delaware County DA says some remains and a rifle were found at the home in East Lansdowne, but he said the investigation is in the early stages. America is listening to Fox News.
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
What would you do if your infant was exposed to THC? I'm Sasha Nixon. Here's what's trending this hour. Police say a 1-year-old at a daycare in Lebanon consumed THC in January. John Herrick reports.
Lebanon police say that 2 employees at the Just Be Kids Learning Center, named Paige Wilson and Stella Latham, tried to eat an edible containing THC while in the classroom, but they left it within the child's reach, so the child ate part of it and had to be rushed to a hospital. That child did survive. Latham and Wilson, though, have been charged with neglect of a dependent. John Herrick, 93 WIBC Mobile News.
And a woman has been arrested after police say she vandalized about 50 cars in the Washington Street parking garage last week.
We don't know why she spray painted the vehicles.
That's Indiana State Police Sergeant John Perrine. State police questioned and arrested Denise Honorio earlier this week. She is now facing felony charges of robbery, battery with moderate injury, and vandalism. But this weekend, you can watch your friends and neighbors compete in the Carmel Winter Games. At this event, Hoosiers will head to the ice at Carter Green to participate in activities like human curling, an ice trike relay, and human hungry hippo. If you would like to spectate, as well as enjoy music selected by a DJ, head to the space between the Palladium and the Booth Tarkington Civic Theater Friday and Saturday. On the level, on the go, and on WIBC.com. Now here's the forecast from the American Standard Heating Weather Center.
Thursday evening, it'll be a cloudy and warm one outside thanks to southwestern breeze, but we may have a slight chance for a little drizzle to sneak in overnight. Be careful on roadways. I'm Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Junior Sutis for 93 WIBC.
Patients everywhere are experiencing joint pain relief thanks to QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. So how does this non-surgical approach work? QC Kinetics Medical Director Dr. Aaron Wolkoff explains.
It's like when you get a paper cut and the cells that come onto that scene first stop the bleeding, and then it recruits more cells to form new skin and new soft tissue. And then you look down a week later, 2 weeks later, and it's like nothing happened and that paper cut never existed.
In this same way, QC Kinetics uses your natural biologics to help repair and restore aching knees, hips, shoulders, and backs.
We take those same similar cells in different areas that are arthritic, are painful, and we cause this kind of internal self-healing that can resolve patients' pain.
Relief without surgery. See if you're a candidate for QC Kinetics regenerative treatments.
Call QC Kinetics 317-559-PAIN. That's 317-559-PAIN. In Eagle Creek, Greenwood, and Carmel. 317-559-PAIN.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed? Because no two people sleep the same. Only the Sleep Number smart bed lets you each choose your individual firmness and comfort, your Sleep Number setting. The Climate 360 smart bed is so smart it actively cools or warms up to 13 degrees on either side for your ideal sleep temperature. And now, during our President's Day sale, save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed, plus free home delivery when you add an adjustable base. Ends Monday. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
Tune in to the Absolute Retirement Planning Show.
When retirement comes about, we're now relying on what we have saved to meet those needs.
Sundays at 9 a.m. right here on 93 WIBC.
Plumbing problems stink. The LD Smith Crew can handle anything. Call today for $50 off any plumbing repair, big or small.
LD Smith Plumbing.
A dirty, stinking honest.
Through their service, veterans have our backs. Now we should have theirs. Learn more at gotyoursix.org.
Tony Katz.
It's Kendall and Casey, the Amber and Nigel show.
All right, when does your show start? Do we know? I feel like I've been promoting this for 9 years now.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Good evening, hello, and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC. We had quite a different show planned for you this evening, and what we ended up getting was absolute chaos this afternoon. There was a ton of news and not a lot of time to get there, so let's go ahead and break this first segment down with a quick news roundup. First of all, Tucker Carlson finally did his interview with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and it looks like the fears that I guess Tucker was just going to bow down to Putin and say how wonderful and great and amazing he was and all that stuff didn't happen. People asked if Tucker had the stones to, for example, question Vladimir Putin over the imprisonment of an American Wall Street Journal journalist. And Tucker asked the question. Now, I will say that with this little bit of an asterisk and a caveat. That's all I'm going to say about the Tucker interview right now, because it dropped an hour ago, and here I am doing the show with y'all. So I'm not going to tell you whether I think it was a great interview, terrible interview. All I can tell you is what I have seen and watched so far, which was the Wall Street Journal clip, and that apparently some hard-hitting questions were asked and some other kind of open-ended questions were asked. Moving on, President Biden has been exonerated after the Department of Justice Special Counsel Robert Hur concluded that, yes, Biden mishandled classified documents, and he did so willfully. In fact, very willfully. This is just incredible. President Biden not only handled the classified documents inappropriately, which, again, not like stuff just got taken out of the office and then stored at home, but according to the handwriting of President Biden's on folders, it looks like President Biden actually, on his way out the door as vice president, sorted classified information into manila folders himself because he misspells Afghanistan the exact same way that he has for decades. Now, the funny part here is that this is technically more damning in terms of evidence than the concurrent case regarding President Trump and also the other case regarding Hillary Clinton regarding classified document storage. But there's one slight difference, and that is the DOJ special counsel's reason for not actually moving forward with charging President Biden in what is a very clear felony. We have considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning, elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions with and observations of him, he is someone who, for many jurors, will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen of the United States of America. President Biden is getting off on a serious felony charge because he cannot remember it. We're going to talk about that a little later on in the show today because the things that President Biden could not remember, oh dear God, help this country. At the time they conducted these interviews, oh dear God, help this country. President Biden is not leading the country. I don't mean that in the casual way that we all agree that he's probably getting a little more influence and push from those in his cabinet. I mean directly, at this moment, President Joe Biden is not in charge of this country. I can say that with every shred of affirmation based on this report from Special Counsel Robert Hur. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not crazy. It is verifiable that the President of the United States has aggressively moved so far into the scummy pits of the dementia that he is sunken into, up not to his knees, up to his neck, that I don't even know how to convey that he was able to finish this interview with special counsel. And now the White House is trying to cover it up. The Democrats' hair is on fire because at this point, it would actually take Donald Trump committing a genuine crime on Fifth Avenue in broad daylight, to use the old joke, in order for Joe Biden to pull this one out. I mean, the left is losing their minds right now because President Biden could not remember when his son died and could not specify if or when he was the vice president of the United States. And, here's the kicker. This interview took place on the day after Hamas struck Israel. So while the president of the United States is dealing with one of the greatest world situations known to man, he can't remember anything. I say again, God help us all. In other more interesting news, I would say, the Supreme Court of the United States took the Colorado lawyers who were arguing that former President Donald Trump needs to be removed from the ballot due to the 14th Amendment of the United States, and every single one of the justices that spoke raked those Colorado lawyers over the coals, including Ketanji Brown Jackson, the equity hire Supreme Court justice who, again, does not have like a rich legal knowledge. She couldn't answer basic questions about U.S. civics from the United States Senate. But even she noted that, and I will give her points for actually reading the 14th Amendment, that there is no part in the insurrection clause that shows a president of the United States can incite insurrection because, he's the president of the United States and he's in charge of the executive branch. Furthermore, justices noted that no one actually was directly ordered to do any kind of insurrection, and that the case is completely phony and bogus, and that's not what the 14th Amendment of the United States is meant for at all, objectively. So we could actually see the very first, in a serious, what some would call a contested case, a 9-0 decision or an 8-1 decision from the Supreme Court in favor of Donald Trump, which is the correct opinion, but to have something objectively this correct come out of all of the justices is, again, pretty incredible. Illegal immigration is getting a lot worse. Now it's not just those who snuck into the country, like the Venezuelan migrants that beat the crap out of the New York City Police Department officers and then were let out with a $0 bail. There are groups of migrants who were let in with catch and release, given a pending court date years from now, that have now been caught by state and federal forces in California selling fake IDs to other California-bound migrants so that they can hide in the United States and not go to their court dates indefinitely. Remember all of those people that Biden wants to hire on the border so they can do more catch and release? Again, very openly, Alejandro Mayorkas has openly stated that is his goal, to get as many people in the United States and entry-level processed as possible. Meaning we come in here, we give them a stamp, and then they go. And then their court case is in the future. Yeah, those people are actually the ones that are causing the problems now. So defrauding the already broken immigration system, President Biden has tried to blackmail the United States Congress, according to a Fox News report. And I say according to a Fox News report, the White House very openly published this, that if Congress didn't get behind them and pass this $60 billion to Ukraine bill and also opening the border bill disguised as some kind of a national security act, then President Biden would order Immigration Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to stop deporting people which is illegal. But, I mean, President Biden probably doesn't even know what he's doing, so everything's fine. This is fantastic. How great is it right at this moment to note that the Democrats put an giggling equity hire who has no idea what she's doing, who polled less than 3% in her home state, as the person they have on deck behind a walking corpse. Excellent stuff. I just love comeuppance, and this is like the comeuppatiest of comeuppance that has ever comeuppance and commenced the comeuppance around us. It is fantastic, and I'm here for it, because if we're going to have a dumpster fire, it might as well be a Class 5 Category Alpha blaze. I mean, Smokey Bear should get offended at the state of the dumpster fire of this country. If it's going to be a bad one, it better be a really bad one. Up next, we are talking to Joel Berry from the Babylon Bee, because at a time like this, you just need a little bit of satire. So stick around for that. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Hammer and Nigel.
Biden constantly lies.
He was doing a victory lap on prices. He said costs were down. Just because it's not at the record level that you were responsible for previously, you don't get to do a victory lap. It's still substantially higher than when your predecessor was in office.
Yeah, and they're not coming back down.
Hammer and Nigel, weekdays 3 till 7 on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Has the holiday season left you overwhelmed, stressed out, and overweight? Do you feel frustrated when you think about what you need to do to be healthy and feel better? You deserve a simple approach to a stronger, healthier, and more enjoyable life. Exercise Inc. has been helping people in Central Indiana reach their health and fitness goals for 20 years. The approach is simple. Strength train with a certified coach once a week for 20 minutes. Adopt the 9 simple habits you need to follow to change your health and lose weight. Then get out there and enjoy life, because you'll be stronger and have more energy, and you're going to feel better, and you'll lose weight, and you'll probably even look better too. And you may even be able to get off of some of those prescription medications. Exercise Inc., Avon, Brownsburg, Greenwood, Zionsville, and now in Fishers. The studios are private, no mirrors, no music, and no spandex. Just you and a professional coach working to reach your goals for the new year. Go to exerciseinc.com today to sign up for a free consultation.
Are your health insurance premiums making you sick? George and Megan at yourcoverage.net can help. George and Megan have helped countless individuals and families save 30 to 60% on health insurance with superior coverage. George recently saved a family of 4 $800 a month with the Aetna Network $0 deductible and $0 doctor office copay plan. This is not a government-sponsored health insurance plan. So if you're uninsured, recently lost your job, on COBRA, or are paying extremely high rates for Obamacare or your work coverage, George and Megan will help you if you meet the flexible guidelines for health insurance. Yourcoverage.net will provide you the best coverage at the lowest rate. Their goal is to give you peace of mind and the utmost in healthcare. Go to yourcoverage.net and see for yourself, or better yet, call George and Megan at 1-800-491-5500. That's 1-800-491-5500. Or go to yourcoverage.net. That's yourcoverage.net, a premium personalized healthcare plan managed and designed by you, not the government.
Hi, this is Denny Smith for Zero-Res, and how about a good carpet cleaning right now while you're stuck indoors? Those stains aren't the only thing in your carpet right now. There's dirt and dander and bacteria and germs, and in the winter, you're stuck indoors where there's no escape from it. So you're breathing all that stuff. Zero-Res can help you, and they'll clean 3 rooms of carpet starting at $119, plus a free hallway and 20% off all other services. Zero-Res has this gotta-love-it guarantee that makes it easy to get what you pay for. Not only are the Zero-Res techs trained to the highest standards, nobody but Zero-Res has the patented electrolyzed ZR water that cleans with no soap, no harsh chemicals, and no residue to attract more dirt. Schedule the real carpet cleaning professionals online today at ZeroResIndy.com and mention WIBC. You'll get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned starting at $119, plus a free hallway and 20% off all other services. Easy to schedule by calling 317-388-5141 or online at ZeroResIndy.com.
When life happens, Michelis happens to help you through it. That includes water, storms, fire, and the whole insurance mess. Working hand in hand with the claims adjuster, Michelis is your advocate, your voice, your local trusted advisor for cleaning up, building back, and moving forward when disaster strikes. Now that is an insurance policy. Make it Michaelis. Call 844-FIX-INDY.
Hey, this is Spencer Thompson at Thompson Furniture and Mattress in Columbus. Imagine sleeping on a cloud with a new Tempur-Pedic, Stearns & Foster, or Sealy mattress, and you can say goodbye to restless nights and waking up sore, and you get the sleep you deserve and want. Don't miss our President's Day mattress sale where you can save up to $800, get free delivery, and interest-free financing. Sale ends Tuesday, February 27th, only at Thompson Furniture and Mattress in Columbus.
The deals and specials are sizzling hot. It's the Central Indiana Gun and Knife Show this Saturday and Sunday at the Stoutfield National Guard Armory on West Minnesota Street. The best dealers in the region, hundreds of tables, just $6 for adults, kids 12 and under free. Must be 18 or accompanied by an adult. Buy, sell, trade this Saturday 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sunday 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Stoutfield National Guard Armory. For more info, visit CentralIndianaGunShows.com.
This hour on 93 WIBC is powered by Pierce Jewelers, Carmel's Diamond Engagement Ring Store.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC. I'm Tony Kinnett, joined this evening by Joel Berry, the managing editor for the Babylon Bee, a satirical news publication that causes a fair amount of trouble. You've probably seen their headlines on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever social media that you're on, MySpace, I don't know. There's a lot of fantastic headlines that have given the people over at Snopes a headache, and that is a little bit about what we are talking about today. Joel, thanks for hopping on with us. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So Matt Walsh, which is how many great stories start, Matt Walsh tweeted out that slavery is world history and that white people didn't invent it and they weren't the first to practice it, but they were the first to abolish it. And then he pointed out the last place in the world that was legal for slavery was Africa, and that it wasn't abolished until 1981. And this irked one of the guys that considers himself a scholar of critical race theory and DEI, Ibram X. Kendi, and he called this the ultimate white savior statement.
You mean Henry Rogers? Is that who you're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Henry Rogers, the guy who wrote such classics as Anti-Racist Baby, which I guess I didn't realize how insane that book was until I had kids. And I'm like reading them books. They have no idea what's going on because, they're under the age of 2. Uh-huh. I can't even imagine going, now, decolonization in the 1800s began with, that's ridiculous. So anywho, you, like many of us out there on the internet, decided to throw in a little bit of sass. You said, call it what you want, but it's 100% true. And this absolutely set old Henry Rogers off. And he got mad at you and said, if you believe this to be 100% true, then that means you believe black people contributed little to the abolition of slavery, which I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not really even sure what that means. I'm not really sure. And then he says that since you're so stuck on white saviors, you may want to save yourself from ignorance, which is another one that I don't, I've studied critical race theory at the graduate level for like 8 or 9 years now. And I have no idea what he's trying to say there. Can you help me out?
I don't think he knows what he's trying to say anymore either. It really is just, it's sad because, here's a guy, we make fun of his name because his real name is Henry Rogers. He's like an upper middle class, private school educated kid that got this African name, became this activist. He got fired from his college newspaper because he wrote an op-ed saying that white people invented AIDS to genocide black people. So he's kind of always been this guy. He's a bit of an ignoramus, and the sad thing to me is the fact that he's been elevated to this position, really by white people, by white liberals, to act as kind of this spokesman, this anti-racist spokesman, at the cost of elevating black Americans who actually deserve to be elevated. People like Thomas Sowell and Clarence Thomas, people who are actually smart and know a few things. Instead, they lift up this guy. And so, it kind of, what he said kind of prompted a response from me, because I I had looked into this for myself a few years ago. I was doing some research for some other writing I was doing, and I was shocked. I mean, I grew up, I was homeschooled for a while. I went to Christian school for a while. And even as like a evangelical Christian school kid, I had not learned the true history of America's abolition of slavery and how it went down. We're kind of all taught that, slavery is in our DNA. We were founded on slavery. And come to find out, the colonies were trying to ban slavery before we even declared independence. I mean, they were trying to do this. King George was shutting them down. That was actually one of the reasons we declared independence, was so that so states would have the ability to ban slavery. And Vermont was the first territory to ban it just a year after the Declaration of Independence was signed. Pennsylvania came along a year later. By the time Great Britain banned slavery, I think all of the northern states had already banned it. Great Britain kind of gets credit for being the first country to ban slavery. Some people say Haiti, while it was a French colony, that when the French banned slavery, but really it was the American states who did it first. They were the leaders of the world. I think the rest of the world kind of got swept up in this revolution and followed the leadership of the founders of America, who were abolitionists at heart.
Absolutely.
And that's a history that's just not known. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that more people don't know it.
Dude, it grinds my gears, to quote the great scholar Peter Griffin. Honestly, though, well, just to take a moment, we're on with Joel Berry from the Babylon Bee, talking a little bit about, again, some of the goofiness that comes up when we start talking about history education regarding the abolition of slavery. Because, again, you and I grew up in Indiana. And we're often taught that the entire country was founded on slavery and that the United States had to be dragged kicking and screaming away from it, when in reality, half of the country had moved on voluntarily even before Great Britain. And it wasn't just that, suddenly the northern states one day decided that they were going to abolish slavery. Like, just they woke up and just inspiration struck. The northern Protestant denominations drove, and I don't just mean that they kind of softly advocated for it, kind of like a lot of modern Protestant denominations do in regard to like pro-life issues, but I mean they drove this issue for decades and decades. And Northern and Independent Baptists, Methodists, not to mention the earlier Presbyterians, Lutherans, they were so aggressively anti-slavery that when the Civil War began, you had like entire regiments that were just founded of like Bible-thumping Protestants from the North who were eager to go fight for slavery. And, may I mention, some of the first lobbyists in the country were religious leaders from Northern Protestants who tried to lobby the President of the United States during the Civil War to make it about slavery. We never talk about that.
We never talk about it. It's like it is a history that's been erased, is the great Christian movement to abolish slavery, not just here, but in Europe too. It was a Christian movement. It was mostly a Methodist movement in Europe. And we always hear the drumbeat that is constantly out there in the culture, in our entertainment, in our academia, is that Christians use the Bible to justify slavery. Well, okay, right. The Bible's been used to justify every atrocity by evil people for thousands of years. I mean, leftists are using the Bible to justify abortion and transing kids now. So nothing has changed.
It's the most powerful book in history. Of course, people are going to try to manipulate it to do stupid things.
Exactly. But there's no denying that the abolitionist movement was at its core a Christian movement. And it really, it's been completely erased. And people like Kendi should know better. He was raised a Christian. And for him to kind of reject the very foundations, the very worldview that led to the freedom of millions around the world to begin with is just crazy.
But it's strangely fitting, though, because, and this is one of the groups that the Babylon Bee likes to pick on the most, are these ex-evangelicals. There's no one as bitter as, and look, you went to a Christian school. I went to a Christian school in high school. You and I both know how bitter some people are who grew up around Christians and grew up in the faith and then left it. I mean, it's so palpable, and it frustrates me because it's so unnecessary. I mean, again, the majority of atheists that I've met are not even as militant as ex-evangelicals tend to be about these kinds of things. So many excellent guests with us this evening that we just can't fit them all into one radio segment. That means you're going to have to head over to your favorite podcasting service and search the Tony Kinnett Cast in order to hear the rest of this interview with Joel Berry, the managing editor at the Babylon Bee. Up next, we're talking to Senator Eric Schmitt from Missouri, who has a response to the Biden administration's insane blackmail of Republican senators regarding ICE deportations over the Ukraine funding bill. You are listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Back in my day, we would camp in the backyard and tell scary stories. Except we weren't the greatest storytellers.
Zero tension building.
But with the Xfinity 10G network, we'll get insanely fast internet in the house and outside. So we can stream scary stories all the way out here.
Ooh, this one's called The Wedding Nightmare.
Fire it up.
It was then that Jessica realized the airline had lost her gown.
The next generation 10G network only from Xfinity. The future starts now. Save more this season when you get Xfinity Internet and Mobile. Or now through March 4th, get 75 megabit internet on the Xfinity 10G network for just $20 a month for 12 months with no annual contract. Click, call, or visit a store today. Requires paperless plan and auto-pay with stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Equipment, taxes, and fees extra. After promo, regular rates apply. Actual speeds vary. Xfinity Mobile requires Xfinity Internet. Xfinity 10G network brings improved speed, security, reliability, and latency. Xfinity 10 gigabit service tier subject to permitting and construction requirements.
To me, the most important word in the world is dignity. There are certain God-given rights to be fed, to have shelter, medicine, and clothing. When many of our clients come to us, they face the great risk of losing much of what they have. In some cases, losing everything. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. In one instant, an accident, a natural disaster, or the intentional acts of others can threaten our dignity. Whether it's the loss of a paycheck, paying medical bills, enduring a life of pain and suffering, or a claim with your own insurance company, or a business dispute and you can't afford to pay a lawyer by the hour, your dignity hangs in the balance. You only pay us if we recover for you. Let my firm fight for you, your family, and your dignity. Call us for a free consultation. Dial pound law on your cell phone. That's pound 529. Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com.
Chris Brockman here from the world-famous Rich Eisen Show. Football's regular season may be over, but that doesn't mean your fantasy season is. The big game is right around the corner, and basketball season is really heating up. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app. This isn't like other daily fantasy apps where you're playing against a bunch of sharks. It's just you against the numbers. And with the right selections, you could turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. For the big game, I'm picking San Francisco's running back over touchdowns and Kansas City's tight end over receptions. With over 7 million sports fans already signed up, I am one of them. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. They're even offering a big game special. If Kansas City's quarterback throws for more than 1 yard, you win. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code PRIMETIME. That's code PRIMETIME on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Franciscan Health has been your hometown leader in heart care for decades. Recognized in 2024 by Healthgrades as the #1 hospital in Indiana for cardiology and by CareChecks as #1 in Indiana for major cardiac surgery and interventional coronary care, we're proud to keep the hearts of our community beating strong. Franciscan Health, where our greatest reward has always been serving you. Take a heart risk assessment or schedule an appointment at franciscanhealth.org/heartcare.
Valentine's Day is around the corner, and that means PA Jewelers inside Premier Arms in Brownsburg. Now through Valentine's Day, or while supplies last, buy any jewelry or watch from PA Jewelers and walk out with a free gift box of Valentine's candy from the Fudge Kettle Chocolates. Get and give 2 gifts for 1 at PA Jewelers and support 2 local businesses. Your Valentine will love both gifts and never know you got such a great deal. 3754 South Green Street in Brownsburg. 317-858-3030 or online at premierarms.com.
Tune in Saturdays 9 to 1 for the Home and Garden Show for advice and fun. Brought to you by Michaelis. Water, storms, fire, and wet basements. Life happens. Michaelis happens to help you through it.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Hey, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC. We are joined by Senator Eric Schmitt, the junior senator from Missouri and the former attorney general, which is rather relevant given the stuff coming out of the White House, who is now threatening to reduce ICE deportations if Republicans don't pick up that slack and vote for the Ukraine funding along with the border bill. Senator, good morning.
It's good to be with you.
So tell me your first reaction to this interesting, well, let's not call it blackmail. Let's just say very awkward threat from the White House.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised that this White House would do something like this, considering they completely just opened the floodgates, day one, really. And it felt at the time very reflexive, like, everything Trump did was bad and we're going to reverse everything. And we're seeing now the consequences of it. 9 million people here illegally. But I think that one thing that people probably don't talk about enough is this is willful. I mean, this is not like, an accident. This is on purpose. They're an open borders crowd. These are the people populating that White House now are true believers in this stuff. They don't really believe in the sovereignty of the United States. They don't think these borders mean anything. They think they're arbitrary. We're all global citizens and everybody should be able to come in, get processed, be citizens, and get benefits. I mean, that's what they believe. So we really shouldn't be that surprised that we're at where we're at. And you ultimately need an executive and an executive branch that wants to enforce the laws. And that's principally the problem. So this recent threat of not now, deporting anyone or detaining anyone is par for the course, but ought to be still pretty shocking to people.
Now, over the last couple of years, Vice President Kamala Harris, President Biden, as well as Alejandro Mayorkas, and of course, Karine Jean-Pierre, speaking for them in the press conferences, had said that the border was secure. And they said the border was secure up until about 2 months ago. What changed for them? Was it the American people? Was it like, did immigrants suddenly start showing up to the border? What changed?
Polling and President Biden knows he's at real risk. I think this is now the number one issue in front of Americans, even ahead of inflation and the economy, which are still big concerns for people, and rightfully so. But this, unadulterated stream of people coming across the border, the signals that are sent. So obviously they're not enforcing the law, but that sends a huge, flashing red light to the people who are moving these folks, which are the cartels. We've been down there. A lot of people have been down there. But what you learn is they have these spheres of influence and pathways that not only do they, traffic drugs into the United States, but also people. And when they know and they're coaching people what to say, seeking asylum, and then you have essentially people released into the interior of the United States and given court dates sometimes in the 2030s. That's why we're at where we're at, And so the cartels are making a lot of money on this. They know what the deal is, and we have a completely open border. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And, no president in the history of the country has done this. Not even Barack Obama had this kind of malfeasance on his hands. So it's the number one issue. They recognize it. And why you see this kind of ridiculous pivot now where they're like, well, we'd have a secure border if it wasn't for those pesky MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump. I mean, nobody's buying this. It's a total joke.
Well, that isn't stopping them.
Honestly, between Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, there ought to be a drinking game. That anytime they say extremist or MAGA Republican, you got to drink. In Washington, D.C. would be drunk by 10 in the morning. So,
well, I mean, it is D.C.
It might be anyway, right? Yeah,
it's not terribly unusual. On with Senator Schmitt, the junior senator from Missouri. So this is one of the things I wanted to mention. You talked about Joe Biden being a president that perhaps was more loose-handed on the border than any other president. Yet he's going around the country telling people that he can't touch the border unless the Republicans pass a law. I'm confused. Isn't immigration through non-points of entry, just crossing the border, isn't that already illegal? Isn't that why it's called illegal immigration?
Yeah, and forever we've had a system where if you come here illegally, you're detained and deported. Okay, maybe if you're seeking asylum, you would get a court date. But those 9 out of 10 of those claims are bogus, and it can be very orderly and effective when you want to enforce the law. But to your point, yes, Joe Biden has every authority he needs right now under existing law to secure our border. The laws haven't changed since Donald Trump was president and we had a secure border. There's a couple of things he could do right now with the stroke of a pen that have been, upheld by the courts. One is remain in Mexico. Instead of doing this catch and release where you don't ever see these people again, you make Mexico the waiting room for people as they're coming here. That would deter a lot, the cartel activity, and people would know it's not a completely open door. And it makes a lot of sense.
Imagine if those individuals from that Venezuelan gang in New York City had to remain in Mexico instead of beating those cops in New York City and then getting a bus ticket to California.
That's a very real world example. And those people would never even attempt it, right? Or if they did, they'd be in Mexico waiting and they would be denied and they'd never get here. As opposed to this kind of like, now we got to figure out where people are at. And I don't think this administration is committed to deporting people anyway. So there's no real consequence.
Well, they just told, I was getting ready to say, they just told you that if you guys don't, again, fund Ukraine, a bunch of other foreign spending, as well as foreign aid to Hamas, which we still haven't been able to prove actually goes to people in Palestine or in the Gaza Strip that are struggling, who need that aid, then how there are a few times as a commentator or as a columnist that I'm at a loss for words. Openly admitting that you will deport less people if Republicans don't fund Ukraine is a wild one for me, regardless of your opinion on foreign policy spending.
Yep, and they're abusing parole, right? You're supposed to be individual adjudications, but these are classifications or from a certain country, what's patently illegal. You're not supposed to allow that to happen, but they're willfully ignoring the law. But look, I think it's time for people to fully appreciate what this is really about for the Democrats. It is about power and control. This is the same party that wants to blow up the filibuster so they can pack the Supreme Court, add states to the union, right? And so they're playing for the 2030 census. Not a lot of people know this, but you don't have to be a citizen to be counted in the census. And that affects redistricting, that affects allocation of seats. This is clearly the game plan, and to create a problem so big that they believe the only solution is mass amnesty. So I think if you look at it from that context, a lot of this stuff actually makes sense. And then fundamentally, philosophically, they don't actually believe that borders mean anything. That it's
go into detail on that for me a little bit. When you say borders don't mean anything, give me a little more here.
That we believe that a nation state, you can't have a country if you don't believe in the sovereignty of your border, right? If you don't actually believe you're there to protect, and some people come here through a legal process, and we don't want to tolerate people coming here illegally. They don't believe in that distinction. They don't believe in that distinction. So what they mean is that anybody from anywhere in the world, as world citizens, should be able to come here. And we should never tell them no. And one of the things in this border bill that blew up, thankfully, because it was essentially an open borders bill that was negotiated and Democrats got pretty much everything that they wanted. One of the things that was in there that not a lot of people were talking about was, instead of these claims being handled through the normal judicial process, they were creating these asylum officers. And nobody wants to be an asylum officer really to say no. So now all of a sudden you can be granted essentially citizenship at the border, not through a court process, but through these asylum officers. This is, look, if you were a left-wing open borders think tank, this is the kind of stuff you come up with in a white paper. The problem the country has right now is these people are now in positions of power. And I think it's time to sort of wake up to what the agenda is really all about. And the American people are with us on this. They understand. They support legal immigration, but they don't support what's happening right now. We don't. It's a national security issue. We know for a fact there are people here who want to do us harm that have gotten here illegally.
That's actually what I want to hit on. You're a senator from Missouri. I'm from Indiana. There are a lot of people who are listening to this that are from what many would consider flyover country that aren't even on the border. And I've spoken with a lot of families who are Hispanic near Indianapolis. I know that in Missouri, you guys have a lot of individuals who immigrated into the United States legally. Yep. They're not really huge fans of this border crisis. In fact, I was talking to one individual who said that the people that he's seeing cross the border on social media don't even appear to be Hispanic. They appear to be Chinese nationals and individuals that might be on terror watch lists from Middle Eastern and Central Asian countries. You're on the Armed Services, Commerce, and Joint Economic Committees. What kind of stuff have you seen that are big red flag moments for individuals crossing the border?
The number of single adult males coming That's sometimes a tell of what's happening, and we've never seen those kinds of numbers right now, right?
You've never seen those kinds of numbers. I mean, I'm told that it's just pregnant women and
right.
like toddlers and ancient
AOC's
men
crying because of the cages, all this sort of stuff, the histrionics that go into that. But no, that's what's happening, and you're right. From the Middle East, from China, we're seeing folks from those places. There's travel agencies that are popping up in Africa to move people here because they're very well aware that anybody can come in right now.
Travel agencies in Africa?
Yes.
For illegal immigration.
For the purpose of getting people to a country, right, that they can make their way here. And so, look, it's become an industry, and they're taking their cues from the Biden administration. You brought up a very important point, though. Some of the people who are most ardently opposed to this stream of illegal immigration are the people who've actually waited in line and came here legally. And they're tired of this. They don't like to see this. It's really an insult to them for following the law. So look, if you kind of come from this leftist world and you want to destroy important institutions and start all over, one of the things you do is you get people sort of disaffected. And, if there's no distinction between what's legal and illegal or right or wrong, you begin that process. And that's another sort of thing that's happening here. So I just think it's a lot worse than people think. It's going to affect so many different things. And you talk about Indiana and Missouri. Every state's a border state. And I don't mean that as some sort of cliche. The truth is the human trafficking is happening in all of our states. The fentanyl that's killing people in our communities is coming from China via through our porous southern border. It's being enabled by this activity. And then, of course, the real risk we have of something bad happening in the homeland, this is a gateway. And so, again, I think the Democrats have just made a calculation that they view this as a path to success for them electorally, and all the consequences be damned. And that's a very different calculation than I think. And I try to tell people that in this country right now, we're not arguing about little things. We're not arguing about what, marginal tax rates, or, things that you can have a reasonable kind of debate about of what's the best way to do this. Traditional Republican versus Democrat kind of debates. We're talking about big stuff. We're talking about them being a couple votes away in the United States Senate from packing the Supreme Court, right? Because they just want to get their way, or adding Washington, D.C. or Puerto Rico as a state just because they want to get their way, or not even having a border that matters anymore just so they can get their way. So there's a lot on the line for this republic to remain intact, where people there's accountability and you send people there to make decisions, as opposed to this kind of results-oriented approach, which has dominated their thinking from the legal perspective for so many years. The Constitution doesn't mean much. It's a living and breathing document, and whatever I want it to mean is what it can mean that morning, depending on what I had for breakfast. That's kind of how they view it. And now you're seeing that mentality kind of seep into everything else. And we could get into the sort of the cultural Marxism of DEI and the CRT that's happening in our schools again, to try to fundamentally dismantle the things that we have collectively believed in this country. If you destroy all that and you can start all over, that's kind of their goal.
Senator Eric Schmitt, Jr., Senator from Missouri, formerly the Missouri Attorney General. Thank you very much for hopping on with us and breaking some of this down.
Anytime. Take care.
You are listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Another news update is minutes away.
An airstrike has killed a militia commander leading the group blamed for the attack on a U.S. base in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers.
Get the facts.
$1 billion FSSA shortfall.
This is a forecasting error.
Not just the talking points.
Road rage incident. Shots fired. Man driving a Chevy Malibu.
Witnesses gave us information.
Arrested and taken to jail.
On the level, on the go. 93 WIBC Mobile News.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Hey, got a question for you. Have you saved more than $200,000 for retirement? Do you want this money to work for you without taking a lot of risk? Hammer and Nigel here. What if you could take this money and get an upfront 13% bonus and get a competitive return that's averaged 7% a year for the past 10 years? Sounds pretty darn good, doesn't it?
To get all the details, call Bill Demery right here in Indy. He's my retirement guy. He's your retirement guy. Call Bill right now, 317-648-5120. Discover how you could get an upfront 13% bonus, earn a competitive return that's average 7% 8% a year for the last 10 years. And it's all backed by one of the largest insurance companies in the world. This offer won't last long. Call Bill Demery, 317-648-5120. That's 317-648-5120. Past performance is no guarantee of future returns.
Weather in Indiana. It's a couple of weeks. We go from Arctic sub-zero degrees to temperatures above freezing with buckets of rain. And you know what? That means potholes, ladies and gentlemen. I get off on West Street every day coming downtown to work. They're all over the place. It's one of the reasons why I'm a AAA member. For the peace of mind of their roadside assistance. Flat tires, dead batteries. AAA is there 24/7, 365 days a year.
And if you need new tires, AAA's got you covered with their mobile tire service, My Pit Crew. They bring the tire shop to you. I know this because I've used this service. Had a flat tire at home, called My Pit Crew, and they came to my house. All you have to do is visit mypitcrew.com, pick out your tires, and schedule the installation. And AAA members get a discount on My Pit Crew tire installation. So do yourself a favor and join AAA today. Visit AAA.com or call 844-GO-AAA-GO or stop by your local AAA office.
Technology Recyclers is Indiana's #1 choice for computer and electronics recycling. A Hoosier veteran-owned company, Technology Recyclers is R2 certified, 100% landfill free, and always guarantees complete data destruction. You can expect free business pickups anywhere in Indiana. Visit Technology Recyclers at tech-recyclers.com or call 1-800-237-3887. Technology Recyclers, the official sponsors of tomorrow. That's tech-recyclers.com for a stress-free experience in recycling.
Thinning hair? This year, grow your hair back like I did. Call 317-522-2995 or visit WeGrowHairIndy.com.
Woodard M. Hart, Henry, Reeves, and Wagner. Over 140 years specializing exclusively in patent, trademark, trade secret, and copyright law and litigation. On the web at uspatent.com.
Kids across America are going to school hungry every day. No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures. Learn more at helpnokidhungry.org.
Look through your children's eyes, and you will discover the true magic of a forest. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Good evening and welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC. As I have said before, there are a lot of times when I'm really thankful to be the last local show of the air here on 93 WIBC. But it's also kind of a rough thing because there is a lot of news that tends to break in the later part of the day. And that is that through President Biden's exoneration, it has been revealed through the special investigation that President Biden's dementia has progressed so severely that the day after Hamas attacked Israel, the man who holds the nuclear football, the nuclear codes, could not remember if or when he was the vice president, and he could not remember when his son died. And by the way, this is the same time that his wife, Jill, was running around the country saying that any rumors that the president was declining in mental health is ridiculous. It's at the prime of his stuff. So I just want to make this clear on the air. Jill Biden is one of the worst human beings. She is a horrible wife. She is a terrible, terrible person. Any individual that would take someone who clearly has dementia and prop them up in front of other people to humiliate themselves is a despicable, disgusting person. And to be treated like that by your own wife is the height of filth. We're going to go through, here's some of the other crazy things that are coming out, because as people pore over this special counsel report on Biden's document handling nightmare, it's looking even worse than we thought. So here's an interesting clip. President Biden's ghostwriter, after learning of the special counsel's appointment in this matter, Mr. Biden's ghostwriter deleted audio recordings he had created of his discussions with Mr. Biden During the writings of Mr. Biden's 2017 memoir, the recordings had significant evidentiary value. That's the obstruction of justice, ladies and gentlemen. You can't do that. But just like Hillary Clinton, who magically lost a lot of emails, oh, shucksy doodles darn, I'm sorry, the Department of Justice rules on obstruction of justice and evidence and fraud and a bunch of other things that you or I would be thrown in prison for. At the federal level, that's really only for Republicans, guys. So come on, he's old. After all, we take escaped Nazis who participated in serious crimes, even though they're old and don't remember their own name. We charge and convict them for the last 3 years of your life. But if you're Joe Biden, you can't remember that you committed crimes. Oh, well, it's fine. He only holds the nuclear codes. It's not any better after that because the special counsel's report says, in his interview with our office, Mr. Biden's memory was worse. He did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended, forgetting the second day of the interview when his term began. He did not remember even within several years when his son Beau died. And for a guy that tells Gold Star families, survivors of wildfires and everything else that he knows what they're going through because he lost his son Beau in Iraq, all of the people on the left that are trying so hard to make excuses for the president because a JAG officer totally was exposed to burn pits and died from cancer at home years later, that's the same as losing a soldier in active combat. Oh, dear God, help this country. What a mess. So here's the final statement. We've also considered that at trial, Biden would likely present himself to a jury as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, which leads a lot of people to now be making the case that we need to invoke the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment was brought about so that if a president was incapacitated, that we could peacefully transfer power to the vice president. I hate to tell you guys this, though. The 25th Amendment, in its present state, does not apply to patients of dementia. It doesn't. It didn't work during the Trump administration. It doesn't work now. You don't get to magically change the 25th Amendment because Biden has dementia. It's not what the amendment was written for, and you really wanting it to be true is not the case. Maybe there should be an amendment in the future, but it's kind of hard to measure a specific point to actually discern when an individual is mentally unable to be president of the United States. I'm just saying that as far as constitutional amendments are concerned, they are not infallible. And at the time, we did not actually conceive during the World War II nightmare of presidential leadership in this country that perhaps we might have a president someday whose problem was not stroking out and lying there in state for days, but was indeed suffering from dementia. I will also mention this for those who are listening live. President Biden is set to address the nation at 7:45 Eastern this evening. So he might be getting ready to tell Charlie Chaplin that he's not going to the chocolate factory because Marilyn Manson is dating a teddy bear. And considering that the president can speak to dead German chancellors, that's not entirely unlikely. It's going to be an interesting next couple of days, that's for sure. You can catch all that stuff here. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. You have been listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC. We'll see you tomorrow.
Greetings from R&R Agency, your Indiana health insurance pros, and a sincere thank you to our loyal customers for helping make us national sales leaders for the 7th year in a row. We continue to save our new clients